Hello everyone and welcome to podcast 11 of Let's Revise MBBS. And today's topic is one of the most important topics in obstetrics. It is hypertension in pregnancy. Okay, so let's straight away start with it. First of all, let's see the classification of hypertension in pregnancy. What all is included in this? So basically we have four categories, four types. So first one is gestational hypertension. Okay. Second one is pre-eclampsia, third one is eclampsia, and fourth one is chronic hypertension. Okay, so do you know what is the meaning of word eclampsia? In Greek it means sudden lightening. Okay, sudden something which happens suddenly. So eclampsia is convulsions, right? So which happens suddenly or which is like a lightning, and pre-eclampsia is a condition happening before eclampsia. Okay, so let's talk about gestational hypertension. So we have 4 points which we will discuss in all these 4 categories. So first one is hypertension, which is BP more than 140/90 on 2 separate occasions measured more than 4 hours apart. Okay, so that condition should be satisfied for all the 4 conditions. For gestational hypertension, for preeclampsia, for eclampsia, and for chronic hypertension. This condition of BP more than 140/90 on 2 occasions 4 hours apart should be there in all the 4 conditions. Okay. Second is proteinuria, and this proteinuria should be of more than 300 milligram or 0.3 gram per day. Okay. If this amount of proteinuria is present, we will call it preeclampsia. Okay, if it is not present, we will call it gestational hypertension. There are some more points, but for proteinuria, if it is more than 0.3 gram per day, we cannot call it gestational hypertension. We must call it preeclampsia. Okay, coming on to the third point, which is time. At what time during the pregnancy or at which week does this hypertension occur? If it occurs after 20 weeks, then it is probably due to the pregnancy. Okay, due to placenta or due to pregnancy, this hypertension has occurred. So if the hypertension occurs after 20 weeks, it can either be gestational hypertension or preeclampsia or eclampsia. But to be chronic hypertension, it should be present from before 20 weeks. From the start of the pregnancy, the hypertension should be there to call it as chronic hypertension. And the last one is, when does this hypertension resolve? If it resolves within 6 to 12 weeks after the placenta is delivered or after the delivery, again we can say that it was due to the pregnancy. So if it resolves, then it can either be gestational hypertension, preeclampsia or eclampsia. But if it does not resolve, it means that it was chronic hypertension. The hypertension was there since the pre-pregnant period. Okay, right. So preeclampsia and eclampsia, what is the difference? Preeclampsia is just the hypertension with proteinuria or end organ damage, and eclampsia is hypertension with convulsions. Proteinuria and organ damage may or may not be present. Most of the time it is present, but even if this is not present, even if proteinuria is not present in eclampsia, but if hypertension is there along with convulsions, we can label it as eclampsia. Okay, so what do we mean by end organ damage? Basically, first let me talk about the pathophysiology of eclampsia, and then you will understand it. So exact pathophysiology is not very well understood, but I had told you in the previous podcasts that during the pregnancy, when the cytotrophoblast is growing, it invades the maternal blood vessels, the spiral arteries of maternal vessels, and it helps it to dilate these vessels, and therefore it decreases the resistance of the blood vessels. Okay, but in preeclampsia, this trophoblastic invasion does not occur, or the invasion is faulty. So the resistance in the maternal blood vessels remain high. Okay, because of this, there is placental ischemia, right? Because the blood supply to the placenta is decreased. So there is placental ischemia. In response to this ischemia, there is high level of inflammatory mediators which are released in the blood vessels, and these inflammatory mediators travel or are present in the entire body of the women, not just in the area related to placenta. It spreads into the entire body. So these inflammatory mediators can cause leakage through the capillaries, and this leak can either lead to edema edema and hemoconcentration, because the fluid is leaked out and hence there is hemoconcentration. This is one mechanism. Other thing is that the blood vessels of the mother are hyperreactive or oversensitive to the vasoconstrictors, okay, and their sensitivity to vasodilators is decreased. So vasospasm is one more mechanism. So two mechanisms we saw: increased resistance due to non-invasion of trophoblast, and second is vasospasm. So what will vasospasm do? Vasospasm will cause hemolysis, because through that narrow vessel RBC have to pass and they may get ruptured, and this can lead to hemolysis, okay, and it can also lead to platelet dysfunction. So basically this is in short the pathophysiology of preeclampsia. So due to this vasospasm, the blood supply to the important organs will be decreased, and therefore we can get features of end organ damage. Like if the blood supply to liver is decreased, SGOT, SGPT will be raised. If the blood supply to blood supply to kidneys is decreased, the levels of creatinine will increase. If the blood supply to the brain is decreased, then the patient might have a lot of headache, severe headache, or she might go into eclampsia. She may have visual disturbances. So all these are end organ damage, features of end organ damage. Okay. One more syndrome to study here is HELLP syndrome. HELLP. H is what? Hemolysis. So I have told you why hemolysis occurs. Okay. Elevated liver enzymes. EL is elevated liver enzymes. Why elevated liver enzymes? Because liver is one of the end organs, and if it gets damaged, the enzymes will be elevated, SGOT and SGPT. And the last one is LP, low platelets. So as we have seen, there is platelet dysfunction, and there can also be DIC, disseminated intravascular coagulation, because these inflammatory mediators are released and there is endothelial injury. That at the coagulation cascade may start at that site, and platelets may get consumed at that place. So eventually the concentration of platelets will decrease. So this is HELLP syndrome. Now, what are the risk factors for preeclampsia? For this, you must understand that this placenta, whatever the preeclampsia is there, the main culprit of this is placenta. Okay, because the placenta is new for the body. If the body does not adjust with this placenta, she can land up in preeclampsia. So as we have discussed yesterday, primi gravida is a risk factor for preeclampsia. The other conditions are if there is twin pregnancy, or if there is molar pregnancy. In any condition where there is hypertrophy of placenta or chorionic villi, it can lead to preeclampsia. Okay, so twin pregnancy, molar pregnancy. Any conditions where there is hypercoagulable state like Apla syndrome, sickle cell anemia, etc. So in MCQs, basically you should remember that the main culprit is placenta, and from the options you decide whether this condition is related to placenta or is it not related. If it is related, then it is one of the risk factors. Okay. One more important thing is that smoking is protective. Smoking is said to be protective in preeclampsia. The theory for this is that smoking increases carbon monoxide levels in the blood, and this carbon monoxide prevents the formation of anti-angiogenic factors. So carbon monoxide is preventing anti-angiogenic factors, therefore angiogenesis will occur, and because of angiogenesis the blood rise in BP will be controlled. Okay, this is a mechanism for why smoking is protective. Okay, Now we have seen the classification of hypertension in pregnancy. Now we will see classification of preeclampsia. Inside preeclampsia, we have two classifications, non-severe and severe. So we have seen that in hypertension, the BP should be more than 140/90. Okay, but if it is less than 160/110, we classify it in non-severe preeclampsia. If it is more than 160/110, we classify it in severe preeclampsia. This is one of the main factors. The other factors for classification are DIC. If DIC is present, it goes into the severe preeclampsia. Pulmonary edema. If pulmonary edema is present, it goes into severe. HELLP syndrome present, it goes into severe. And if LFTs and RFTs are deranged, they again go into severe. If they are normal, they are non-severe. So this was the classification of preeclampsia on the basis of severity, non-severe and severe. Why is this important? Because the management changes. So if you have a patient with non-severe preeclampsia, okay, so what will we do is we will continue her pregnancy till 37 weeks and induce labor at 37 weeks. Till that time, we will give her labetalol, okay, which is an antihypertensive. But remember, we should give labetalol only when her BP is 150/100 or more. If the BP is 140/90 or 142/92, we shouldn't give this antihypertensive because it can have side effects. Like if we give antihypertensives at 140/90, her BP may fall down to, let's say, 110/70, and there can be hypoperfusion of placenta, and it can have severe effects on fetus. So remember, we give labetalol in non-severe preeclampsia, but the BP should be more than 150/100 for that. Okay, so we only give labetalol and terminate the pregnancy at 37 weeks in non-severe cases. If the case is severe, then we know what is preeclampsia. It is condition before eclampsia, so it may precipitate into eclampsia. There may be convulsions. So to prevent this convulsions, we prophylactically give magnesium sulfate. Okay, and we also add antihypertensive drug. Same, labetalol is also added along with magnesium sulfate. So what is the mechanism of action of magnesium sulfate? It basically inhibits calcium channels, and it also acts via NMDA receptors. Okay, so in preeclampsia or eclampsia, there is constriction of or vasospasm of mainly the blood vessels of the brain. So there is decreased perfusion to the brain, and this leads to seizures. So magnesium sulfate basically dilates those blood vessels in the brain, okay, by inhibiting calcium channels, right? So we saw the management of severe eclampsia. What are the other drugs, other antihypertensive drugs which are safe in pregnancy? These are alpha-methyl-dopa, hydralazine, nitroglycerin, etc. But one important thing is that ACE inhibitors and diazoxides are contraindicated. Okay, they'll mostly ask you which drugs are contraindicated. So ACE inhibitors and diazoxide, these two are important. Now let's move on to eclampsia. Eclampsia is, as we have seen, hypertension along with convulsions. So how do you manage? Initial steps are similar to those like what you manage for any convulsions. You try to maintain their airway, move them to a safer position, maintain their airway. These steps are same. Next step, what we do here for eclampsia specifically is we give her MgSO4. There is a regime which is Pritchard regime. So we follow Pritchard regime for giving MgSO4. So what is this regime? In this, we divide this in two doses. First one is loading dose and next is maintenance dose. So the main purpose of loading dose is to stop those seizures immediately, and then maintenance dose is to prevent further seizures. So loading dose, total loading dose is 14 grams. How is this 14 gram divided? 4 gram is given through IV route and 10 gram is given through IM route, intramuscular route. So the IV route acts instantly and IM route acts for a longer duration. So 4 gram is given through IV, but the concentration is 20%. So 4 gram given in 20 ml of normal saline. Okay, the total volume of the fluid should be 20 ml and total quantity of MgSO4 should be 4 gram through the IV route. And through IM we give 10 grams, so 5 gram in each buttock. Okay, and the concentration of the MgSO4 through IM route should be 50%. Okay, IV route was 20%, IM route is 50%. And then this was the loading dose. Then we give her maintenance dose every 4 hourly, which is same 5 grams. 5 gram 4 hourly, concentration is 50%. Okay, this is the regime. And we continue this maintenance dose till 24 hours after delivery. Okay, because we know that eclampsia, preeclampsia, all these are conditions occurring due to placenta. Once we remove the placenta, all these conditions will go away. That's why we continue till 24 hours after pregnancy and then we stop it. Okay, and the management, the main management for eclampsia is termination of pregnancy, irrespective of week of gestation. We saw in non-severe preeclampsia that we terminate the pregnancy at 37 weeks. In severe eclampsia, we terminate at 34 weeks. But in eclampsia, we terminate the pregnancy as soon as possible. We terminate it immediately. Okay, doesn't matter which week the female is of which week, 28, 29, 40, 38, any week, we terminate the pregnancy immediately. First, we give all these conditions, we stabilize the patient, we give her MgSO4 and then we terminate the pregnancy. So how to terminate? Whether to do C-section or to go for vaginal delivery, we decide that on the Bishop score. So Bishop score is basically we decide whether the female will be able to deliver vaginally right now, or there are no any signs of contractions of uterus and all those things we see, and then we take a call whether to go for vaginal delivery or to go for C-section. Okay, now let's talk about MgSO4 a bit. MgSO4 is a drug which has a very narrow therapeutic range. So between 4 to 7 milliequivalents it is effective. Less than 4 it is not effective, more than 7 it is toxic. And it is mainly excreted through kidneys. So as we have seen that MgSO4 blocks calcium channels. So it blocks calcium channels, therefore it also blocks conduction of nerve impulses. So for its toxicity, we continuously keep on checking deep tendon reflex. So if the deep tendon reflex are, anytime we feel that the deep tendon reflex are depressed or they are absent, it is a sign of toxicity of MgSO4. So in that case, we skip the next dose of MgSO4, the maintenance dose which we are giving 4 hourly, we skip one of the doses and then give the next dose. Okay, and we also monitor urine output. Why do we monitor urine output? It is not renal toxic, but it is excreted through urine. That's why we need to continuously monitor urine output so that we know that the drug is excreted, the drug is getting excreted. Okay, and we also keep on monitoring the respiratory rate, because patient may die of respiratory failure because it is a calcium channel blocker. Okay, if there is high toxicity of magnesium sulfate, we cannot just skip the next dose. We need to give the antidote. The antidote is calcium gluconate. Okay, so what all we have seen? We have seen the classification, basic 4 categories. Then we have seen pathophysiology, the reason why preeclampsia occurs, and then we related it to risk factors. Okay, then we talked about preeclampsia. We divided it into non-severe and severe, and we discussed the management of both of them. Then we came to eclampsia. We saw detailed management of eclampsia. First is airway management, second is Pritchard regime, where we talked about MgSO4. Third is we give her antihypertensives, and final definitive line of treatment is termination of pregnancy. Right, so that's all in hypertension in pregnancy. Okay, see you in the next podcast. Till then, enjoy and keep studying.